Another unit number one would be 173,393. Staff is recommending approval after EEI had reviewed the improvements, and the cost to complete the remaining improvements would be covered in the revised letter of credit amount.
Excellent. Any comments?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak. Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.
5-0, thank you. Item H, we have ordinance 1806, adopting the operating and capital improvement budgets for fiscal year 2019. This is first reading. I'll turn it over to Director Van Voren.
He's done.
Reading. What was that?
It's first reading.
It is first reading, so we are going to talk about the water fund budget in a few minutes.
Okay.
Oh, thrilling.
All right, so no vote on H. I, the Spring Parkway tree purchase and planting, Director Hoppenstedt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll try and keep this brief. It's this time of year that we always discuss tree planting. In the spring in particular, it's a little bit confusing as we try to consume the remaining funds of one fiscal year and also tap into some of the available funds of the next fiscal year. This spring, we're proposing 225 trees to be planted in our parkways through 4 different nurseries that meet the necessary requirements for our planting criteria, which have been reduced over the years. You may recall discussing that previously. So essentially, there are 4 nurseries: Spring Grove Nursery, Goodmark Nursery, Winding Creek, and Fox Ridge. We are proposing $27,402 to come out of fiscal year 18, and an additional $30,896 out of fiscal year 19. While the individual purchases don't meet the requirements for the board approval, typically this is something that you all like to discuss, so I just thought I'd fill you in on that. If there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain those.
You didn't read Monday. Why didn't you read Monday? Landscaping?
That's not a nursery, that is the planting.
Okay.
The planting will come out of fiscal year 19.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't we approve for more?
300 in total was the plan for the year. This is just the spring.
Got it.
There are certain tree species that we prefer to plant in the fall.
Okay.
Nice.
Do we need action on this? No?
Not specifically.
All right.
Thank you for bringing it to us.
Yes, good job.
So no vote?
Don't have to, I mean, it's within my authority. You're welcome to vote on it, it's on there for separate action, so if you want to go ahead and approve it, you can.
So moved.
Second.
Go ahead.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Thank you. J is the 2018 landscape maintenance contract extension, Director Hoppenstedt.
Thank you again. Historically, the village has contracted for landscape maintenance of various common areas and SSAs throughout the village. In the fall of 2016, we went out to bid with landscape maintenance services. In January of 2017, the village board awarded the contract to Cornerstone Partners Horticultural Services Company. You may recall they were one of 2 bidders last year. Their bid included prices not only for the 2017 season, but 2 individual 1-year extensions. Based on their incredible performance last year, I'm recommending that we extend that contract into 2018 at a 1% reduction in cost over their 2017 prices, which were $177,970. So based on my calculations, this year should cost us approximately $176,190.30. If there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain those.
Did they hit all of their completion dates?
They did hit their completion dates, or as the contract stated, if they were not going to meet a completion date due to weather, that they keep us informed. They did respect all of that. I'm pleased to say we didn't get one single residential complaint regarding our landscape contract last year. That's impressive.
Yeah.
So moved.
Call the roll.
Who was the second, please? Thank you. Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
That carries. Thank you. All right, last item for separate action, we have a sidewalk and bike path gap installation plan. Who gets this one? All right, Engineer Wallers, thank you.
So I wanted to go through the sidewalk and bike path gap installation plan, just to summarize. You recall that we had a public open house on January 8th, 2018, where we left the record open for 30 days to get comments. The comments that we did receive are in the board packet this evening. We have made a revision based on the public comments that we got, and that is to add a segment of bike path to connect Griffin to the, so north of the intersection of Griffin and Route 30, we'd extend the path to the north to connect to the path that's near the police station, so that the residents that are on the south side of Route 30 can get all the way to the park. So we thought that was a good recommendation from the residents, and we included that. Also in the packet is a matrix that shows the cost of the, estimated cost of the segments, and it's broken out over 5 years, a 5-year period. We tried to stay in the neighborhood of about $200,000 or so per year as our targeted cost. By moving up the Griffin Drive segment, we did just rearrange things, so there's a little bit more expended in the year one. The other thing I would mention is Jeff had the key map up. We do have detailed information on all those segments, but I think this is probably the best map just to orientate everybody. Each of the years is listed as to where it is generally. And then in addition to the next 5 years, we've listed 5 or 6 future path locations that we would look at in the future, or if the board wanted us to move those up on the list, we could do that. One of them is the path along Waubonsie Creek near the library, so that was one that was recommended. I know the library district has supported that. We've also had a request from Oswego to look at connecting paths that would be able to get people on basically on the east side of Route 34 over to the Ogden Falls or Ogden Hill subdivision or commercial area. And then on the south, we had requests for bike paths to connect the park that's on Kennedy Road, and then also the park or the YMCA that's going to be on Galena Road. And those types of projects would generally be probably joint projects with the neighboring community. So again, those are listed as a future, and we haven't costed those out, but we'd certainly be happy to if you'd like to move those up. But anyway, getting back to the original plan, so one change that was made is we moved the Griffin up to the 2018 year. And what we're really looking for tonight is concurrence on the entire 5-year plan, if that's, if the board has a willingness to do that. Or if not, if you want to wait on that, it would be nice to get concurrence on the 2018 program so that we could start to prepare ourselves, because we'd like to construct and build that this year if possible. And that includes the connection from Foxmore subdivision basically over to the Stewart Sports Complex as one element, and then the Griffin connection is another. So that's kind of the situation we're at. And then I think what we would do, and this would be similar to the road program, is that on an annual basis, we would come back and update you all on this sidewalk gap plan to see if there's any changes or anything that came up that was more pressing, and then we would rearrange, the sequence of planning. But this would allow us to, again, if we approve 18, we would move on that, And if we want to approve up to 2022, that would allow us just a budget for that going forward. So I'd be happy to answer questions at this time.
Awesome. Hopefully we didn't mess with your presentation while we were,
No, that was all part of it.
No, I really do appreciate it. And so what you're asking us, and I do really appreciate the plan. We have such a great network of bike paths in Montgomery that almost make these great connections. And I think this is a good way to get us all the way to the finish line on a lot of that. So I do appreciate that. Any comments from the board on the plan? And you're looking for us to approve, ideally, the 5-year plan,
That would
so we
be,
can budget.
that would be appreciated. And then, as I say, we will come back on an annual basis to make sure that we're still on track, similar to what we do with the road program. So if we get, if something changes, obviously, that we can react to it.
So then every year, then, we would be approving another 5-year plan, more or less, something like that.
Well, we would probably work through this 5-year plan. I guess we could start to add the future projects in as the 6th year, or as we complete 1 year, we could add those. So that's a good point. And I would say if you have any of the particular future plans that you think is more important than the other, let us know, and then we can program it accordingly.
Okay.
I have a comment on that. It's scheduled for 2021, Montgomery Road from Briarcliff to Douglas Road. And I see that's one of the ones with the bigger price tag on it, too. I would like to see that moved up if possible, because there is so much foot traffic over there. And I do see a lot of people that are trying to walk along Montgomery Road. If we can just, if it's possible to figure out a way to move
So
that up.
what was the exact,
It's Montgomery Road, under location, it's Montgomery Road from Briarcliff Road to Douglas Road.
I get you. And is that in the area, that's not in the area where Kane County was doing the Phase 1? No, the Phase 1 extends all the way through there, doesn't it?
Oh, wait, yeah, it does. It goes to Briarcliff.
It does. That's unfunded, so that's another reason to revisit the plan every year, is that if we
Okay.
get some movement on Montgomery Road and it looks like the county's gonna move forward with the widening, then obviously we would delete it from the program. But we can, happy to move it up, and then, again, we would just try to consider it at the time to make sure
Yeah.
we're not
I
duplicating effort.
actually forgot about that part of it, so I'm okay with waiting. I am concerned because I know we do have a lot of foot traffic along Montgomery Road.
Okay.
So we'll keep an eye on that
revisit
for
yeah.
sure.
Mhm. Okay. Well, Stan made a motion.
Second?
Any further discussion or comments or questions? Did you
What
have
are we doing? What are we voting on?
Motion to approve the
5-year.
5-year
5-year
sidewalk.
plan?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Trustee Bowden?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
And Trustee Marisak?
Carries 5-0. Thank you much. All right, moving on. Items for discussion. We have fiscal year 2019, a water and water improvement fund budget. Director Van Born.
President Brawley. This is the last of 3 discussions regarding the budget. The public hearing and first reading of the budget took place earlier tonight, and then the second reading and approval of the budget is scheduled for the next meeting on March 26th. Just a couple of items that I wanted to go over in the water and water improvement funds. In water operations, we would be doing some of the engineering for lead service line replacements in fiscal year 19, and then the construction would take place in fiscal year 20. Chemicals would increase $63,000 to $298,000. That is lime and polyphosphate. Water Improvement Fund, we would be doing water main in the Riverside subdivision. That road is actually included in the fiscal year 19 IRP as well. So we do the water main and then come back and do the road. Lastly, Jefferson Street and Illinois 25 lift station improvements would take place later this year as well. So if there's any questions, I can answer those at this time.
I have one and it may be a crossover between you and Director Hoppenstedt. With the IEPA increase in the chlorine requirement, do we need to adjust our budget number? Because we're going to have a larger spend on chemicals?
That hasn't been approved yet. So that requirement is going through a hearing process through the Illinois Pollution Control Board, and they have not ruled on it yet. So once the Illinois Pollution Control Board rules on it, then it goes to the joint, I can't remember the name now, they call it JCAR for final determination, and then it would become a rule. So I don't know as if we have a accurate time of when to expect that change could happen, and it may not happen.
So I wanted to ask, because
I appreciate the fact that we're doing the water main improvements before the roadways. You would be surprised at how many municipalities don't necessarily pay attention to that. It would be common sense, but that's not government.
All right, any other comments on this section of the budget? You have a few more weeks to comment on the whole budget, so. All right, thank you. Moving on, we have Kendall Area Transit Service Agreement discussion. Is this for you or Justin? Okay, I figured that when he was. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, President Brawley. Kendall Area Transit, or CAT, is a public transportation program in Kendall County, serving various mobility needs of the general public and individuals unable to access or operate private automobiles. Just as a reminder, the village's Kane County residents are already served by Ride in Kane, which offers door-to-door bus or taxi service to seniors and disabled individuals in Kane County. Tonight with us, we have Mike Neuenkirchen he's the CAT Program Director, and he's going to give a brief presentation on the program.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Might take me a little bit. I got 12 letters in my last name. Thank you and good evening. My name is Mike Neuenkirch, and I'm the Program Director for Kendall Area Transit. And really, I work for a not-for-profit that's based out of DeKalb called the Voluntary Action Center. The reason why Voluntary Action Center out of DeKalb is running the Kendall Area Transit Program is that there's a couple of different federal programs that were funded under. You get out of the Kane County line and into Kendall County, we're operating under a completely different funding source for transit, and that's under the Section 5311 Federal Operating Assistance Program, as well as the State of Illinois Downstate Operating Assistance Program. So about 10 years ago, when Kendall County was looking to put together a dial-a-ride demand response transit program for Kendall County, they reached out to the Voluntary Action Center of DeKalb because we had been doing for, at that point in time, I think about 25 years, we've been doing demand response service for DeKalb County, as well as small urban transit for DeKalb and Sycamore. So based on those strengths, they asked us to come in. We've been running this program since 2010, and the program has grown from about 1,000 rides a year in that first year or two. I think this year we're headed towards about 28 to 29,000. So it'll be a record year for door-to-door type service. So we're very pleased with that. The dollar amount that's in front of you tonight, $16,000, doesn't sound like much, but what that is local match for the Village of Montgomery to join the system. The way that the CAT program is funded, and very similar to, say, the Ride and Cane program, there's a certain match component that each municipality or each local unit of government has to throw in to help maximize the grant dollars that we can access. So our Downstate Operating Assistance Program through the state of Illinois allows us a 65% match, and then we receive a certain amount of federal funds. And anyway, all those are matching funds, so it's necessary to receive a local matching component, which again, this is where the $16,000 comes in. It doesn't sound like much, but when we start looking at multiple municipalities, we start looking at the county, other local sources in terms of not-for-profits that do service contracts with us for human service transportation, suddenly that dollar amount becomes more like $220,000. We maximize it with federal dollars, and suddenly we've got about $1 million, $1.1 million to operate with. So that's, again, what we're here before tonight with that conversation with you. With the Village of Montgomery, I guess historically, I'm fairly new in the director position with this program. I've been in this position for about 2 years, but I guess this will be the first time the Village of Montgomery has put into the CAT system. So prior to this, we've been offering medical-only services. The majority of our transportation is either medical or it's very heavily weighted towards employment as well. A lot of that is based around employment for people with special needs trying to get to work. But that has cut out a lot of people over the years. So having this opportunity to come before this board, before this municipality, and have you come and join us would be a great boon for us. We were able to start offering some services that we've been turning away, and really help grow the program a little bit. That $16,000 will start looking more like $60,000 when we match it to state and federal funds, and allows me the ability as an operator to bring on an additional staff and vehicle to help pick up some additional trips in the area. Another element they'll add to this, because I don't want to talk too long, I know it's been a long night, that as Justin mentioned, there is the Ride and Cane program, there's Kendall County. That's the challenge with working with these county systems and funding that's dedicated for one geographic area, and there's a municipality that straddles that line, and you deal with that in a lot of different ways, I know. One thing that I've started doing is developing some relations with the Ride and Cane program, because we do understand that there's always cross-county needs. I mean, residents don't really know county borders. They just know that they need to get somewhere. So there'll be some coordination that we'll have to do from that perspective, but I'm very confident that we can all work together to help serve the residents of this village better. And on a personal note, I was telling Justin, I grew up in this area. I was downstate for about 10 years before coming back and doing this. So I remember when Poor Boys Pub in Quinlan and Fabish was the Eagle we went to. And I remember the Pizza Hut that was, now a parking lot, was the place that was where we had to go to eat. So on a personal note, I mean, it's really great to be working with you guys, or potentially, I should say. I would be available for any questions or.
Awesome.
I have a couple questions for you. First of all, thank you for staying through this long meeting. I see in the description of services that you're anticipating approximately 2,000 trips per year. Can you talk about where that number came from?
It's a guess, but we kind of based it on, looked at Plano's numbers. Plano, and the reason why we looked at that, because Montgomery's population for Kendall County is about the same as Plano. Okay. For Plano, we're doing around 3,400, so we figured that would give us an a growth opportunity. And really, if we start taking some residents for, say, dialysis purposes and that sort of thing, we have, as a matter of fact, in past years, just for medical, only have done as close to about 1,000 rides for you. So we figured 2,000 would be a fair starting point. It might grow. There's some other municipalities we started really small with, and as the program has grown, so is demand.
Kind of
The-
long. Go ahead.
The other question I had for you regarding the 16,000 that Montgomery would put in, is that, where does that number come? Is that based on the potential of 2,000 rides? or-
When the program was put into place, there was a $1.55 multiplier that was put into, I'm not sure exactly where that number came from, but I think it was based probably at that time on the amount of local match that they felt they needed to capture a certain amount. So since that time, that $1.55 multiplier per resident, and again, that's based on, I think we based it around 10,500 residents for Village of Montgomery, Kendall County portion. So that dollar amount was slightly higher, but I rounded it down to 16,000. But that's where that amount comes from.
And then would that change if we're not utilizing the service? No?
No.
It's always going to be, well, at this point, it's going to be
At
the
this point in time,
16,000.
I mean, there might be a possibility in the future that if we look to expand services, that we would look to engage the municipalities. And that is one other note I'll say, is that in the past, we've had a relationship with the county who would then build the municipalities. One of the reasons why I'm here tonight, we've started working in the last couple of years, like with the Village of Oswego, now with Montgomery, potentially, I should say, to develop more of a direct relationship with the municipality, so we're not just some operating entity that you guys kind of know vaguely about. And that's something where I could report to Mr. Zolfel and Mr. Van Voren on, quarterly numbers, give you progress reports, that kind of thing, and would be free to come in and talk to you guys.
Just to clarify, that I made sure I heard you correctly, because I have seen the CAT trucks or buses
Yeah.
around, I'm in Kendall.
Yeah.
For Montgomery. So that was medical trips? If someone was getting picked up out of my area, it
Yes.
was most likely a medical trip.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
medical trip. I mean, I will say that there were a few times where we had a heart and we said,
Right.
okay, yeah, this is medical because there was no other, way that, this person gets somewhere.
Right.
But yeah, that's, I guess I shouldn't say in a public meeting, but yeah, we do
Right.
that because people need to get rides and we hate to say no.
Right, okay, because that was my
Yeah.
thinking, was that I knew I had seen them in
Yeah.
in Montgomery, in Kendall County, and I'm thinking, well, if we didn't join this, then how
Exactly,
are those?
but this
okay.
is a way to help grow the program so that we can do more within Montgomery.
Okay,
And
thank you.
that's kind of the question that I had is, assuming that we approve this, and I really hope that we do, because we're offering that, really removes that barrier for so many people to get to work or get to their medical appointments. How can will you have a plan or working with staff to get out the information that this is now available to folks in Montgomery? I'm sure that you've had to do that before, and you'll have a way to get that out, that information.
What we can do is coordinate with, with your staff and with you as a council to get the word out, put press releases. One thing that we've done is when we've started up the program and we've looked to expand services within the community, whenever there's been community forums, that type of thing, we've been out there to work those. A lot of it really with this type of program, we're a general public program, but our ridership is very heavily senior and disabled.
Yeah.
And so some direct outreach to agencies that serve those are, that's usually the best way that we can, grow demand. As an example, actually, I'm currently, I'm immediate past chair of the Kendall County Interagency Council, so we've been working with, social service agencies, and that's one way to, hey, this is what CAT does.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, thank you, appreciate it.
All buses, any vans, just buses?
All our vehicles are they're actually state and federal granted. They're 14 passenger and a few minivans, 3 minivans. They're all ADA accessible. We do have one 22 passenger bus. And in our fleet, we've got about 18 vehicles right now.
And a fare like to, say Seasons Ridge, where should I say? And to Dryer in Oswego is $3.
That's correct.
Is it $3 back too then?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you guys for providing the service for the seniors and the disabled for many years. I'm glad to see that it's before us now to try to step in and help out.
Well, looking forward to potentially working with you. How do I say that?
You did that
Looking
well.
forward to potentially working with you. There we go. So.
Is there any provision to use that service for helping people vote? Is it strictly medical use?
We're general public, so we have taken people to vote.
That'd be good.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we don't get a whole lot of demand to do it, but we have done it. We take people to work, we take people people want to go out and just go eat somewhere, That's part of what the program does.
Okay, good.
Thank you all very much for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to, again, hopefully work with you.
Awesome, Mike, thank you, appreciate it. And when are we looking to approve the agreement?
Well, it's in the fiscal year budget, so when the budget's adopted, then we would
Okay,
move forward. We'd look to start up May 1.
okay, so we could,
We would look to bring the agreement back to the March 26th meeting for approval.
okay, with the budget. Okay.
Is that something that we can put on consent? Or do we need separate action?
I mean, consent
I'm not
is
hearing
separate.
any objection.
It's fine with me.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to item C. This is the alcohol beverage sales and closing hours. I know this is, trustee Marisak had requested that we discuss this. And I think staff has something or whatnot, but if we wanted to discuss this tonight, I don't know if it was, if there was a time commitment that we could hold off until a few weeks,
No, we can, I mean, I have no
depending on how
issue-
long the conversation is.
I have no issue with tabling it to a
Okay,
future
is that
meeting.
okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
And, yeah, okay, thanks, Doug. All right, moving on to item D, which we will talk about, is the storm sewer improvements for Lakewood Creek West.
Can we table this
Engineer
one?
Wallers. What's that?
Can't we table this one?
I was gonna throw a shoe at you, so, go ahead.
So at the last meeting, we were instructed to prepare plans and specs for the construction of the storm sewer improvements at Lakewood Creek and Lakewood Creek West, Commonwealth Edison area. So in the packet this evening is the plan set for your information. Also, we prepared a memo basically summarizing the project. And there's a highlighted map, Jeff, I don't know if you can get to it, I hate almost to ask you, but in the packet, there is a highlighted map that has basically two segments. And so I would just wanted to indicate that this project could be built in phases if you so desired. Also wanted to mention that we did submit, with the help of the village, to ComEd for permitting. I do think it's appropriate to submit for both options from ComEd so that we lock down those permits, and then it gives us the flexibility to construct them either all at once or in phases. And the option B phase is the one that could possibly be included in a IDOT project. When they widen Route 30, they may be able to account for the 24-inch culvert that comes under Route 30. So that's the reason I broke that out separate. So there is potential for that to be improved in the future by another agency. So, and just to give you the background on the project, so the option A section is it's a drain tile that picks up the depressional storage on the Commonwealth Edison easement, and it takes it out to another storm sewer. And then it also provides a segment of storm sewer that helps draw down the detention basin sooner. So that's the option A. And then option B is a 24.
Hold on a second, Pete. Can we get to the, I want to understand what you're saying, and
Sure.
can we give you the laser pointer? That way, once we do get to the correct sheet, we can,
I think you might have,
Two more pages.
oh, yeah.
Two more pages, Jeff.
Jeff is page challenged.
Oh, look, it's in
Perfect.
color,
It's
too.
even colored.
Wow.
Okay, so here we have, again, the yellow is the option A, and this is the drain tile. So this area right here is the lowest point on the Commonwealth Edison easement. This pipe then would be actually perforated so that it would draw down the groundwater along this path. Now, it's as deep as we can make it, but it's not, it's not 9 feet deep, so it's not going to take care of all the groundwater, but it'll pick up the standing water in the depressional area and some of the groundwater along the way. And then that's tied into a storm sewer that runs out to Lakewood Creek. And then, in addition, we have a segment of pipe that's installed here that helps draw down that basin, faster. So there's two pieces to it in option A, the piece here and then the drain tile that picks up the low spot.
And how deep was A?
There's there's a profile and plan in the plan set, Doug, and I'd have to look back at it. I don't want.
That's okay.
But all I'm saying is we installed it as deep as we possibly could. And we put it in a fairly shallow slope to try to maximize that depth, because we knew that it was important to try to catch as much groundwater as we can, but we just can't pick up all of it, for sure.
If option, just so I have my bearings correct, if the beginning of yellow is the low area where the water is pooling here and we come down, is that correct?
Right, that's the low spot right there.
And we come down and we follow and we go along, is option A daylighting and flowing into 14?
Option A is flowing into a manhole right here. That
Okay, and then
goes-
it continues,
eventually
okay.
Goes into Lakewood Creek, actually.
And so option A really is drawing down the groundwater in the area,
It's
hopefully.
picking up the depressional storage that's in that easement now, and as much of the groundwater as we can, yes.
Okay.
And is that graded and such that it's going to flow to that? That's the south side, correct?
Well, we're actually extending it into the depressional area. We're
There.
trying not to do it, we're trying to do as little grading on the Commonwealth Edison site as practical. So we're just going to try to pick up the low area that exists, which there's an area that water will begin to pond initially, and that's, the low spot. Now, there's ups and downs in here, and it's not, it's not a truly graded site now. But again, I think this is the most cost-effective thing that we can do relative to picking up as much of the standing water as we can.
Are we talking about once you hit the manhole cover at, we'll call it Station 1, and that goes into another basin further down the line, are we increasing the outflow in that basin that this water is going to flow into?
No, because the basin that, first of all, both subdivisions drain to Blackberry Creek, so we're not changing watersheds. The basin that we're going to in Lakewood Creek is the large lake that's down by the clubhouse, and it has its own restrictor, so it's not going to change the amount of water that goes into Blackberry Creek at all. It's still restricted through the outlet there.
Does that basin have the capacity to handle the additional water? Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to solve this option and create another problem for someone down the line.
Right, and we believe it does, yeah. And that was part of what we had modeled in the past. Now, this is a slightly refined option from what was looked at back in 2013, so we do want to do some additional modeling on it, but we do believe that there is downstream capacity. This is only a 15-inch tile here, so it's not a huge pipe. So, and there's adequate capacity in and the timing of the flows is usually different, is the other thing. So again, we built a model to look at this in the past. This is a nuanced, in other versions, we had both this pipe and the 24-inch pipe going into the detention basin, but we think by separating them, we'll get better performance over time and more drawdown of the easement, of the water in the easement over time.
In either option, option A or option B, the existing pipes that are there now, are they still going to be used?
Yeah, everything that's in there is still used. And, we say options, it probably could have been phase 1, phase 2, but, so option B is, its main purpose, so there's a 24-inch pipe that comes across 30, right? The water from that 24-inch goes into the 24-inch storm sewer, and then it's carried to the detention basin. That water eventually gets to the detention basin now, but it has to go through kind of a circuitous path across the easement and into those storm sewer inlets that are along the rear yards of those homes. So what this does is it just carries the water directly to the basin so that it doesn't occupy the easement as much. So it's just a kind of a way to bypass it across all of that. We're still going to have water that's probably going to pond in here over, in certain storm events, and the storm sewer that is along the rear yards will function, at that time.
What size storm sewer is there now?
I think that storm sewer along the rear yards is like 24-inch, Steve, but I'd have to double check that, to be quite honest. But I believe it's that order of magnitude. It probably goes down to a smaller amount as it gets to the end, because it does end here at the north end. So it might be 15-inch at the end, but I think at the point where it discharges in, and I could check that, and I don't know if I could read. Let me just see.
I'm trying to pull it up now.
I printed them, so I should be able to see them.
And like you said, it's not necessarily option A or B, it's phase one, phase two.
So I guess we didn't mark the sizes on there, but I can find that out for you. It may have been on some things that we've done in the past, but, okay, it's, yeah, it is a 24-inch. Along that, north-south and along the rear property lines of the home.
That's what's there now.
Yes. But it's at a higher elevation than we would put this other pipe in at, the 24-inch here.
The option B, the stormwater pipes would still be on the ComEd side of the bike path, correct?
Correct.
Is there any grading or anything that needs to be done because of the inlets that are in the residents' backyards? You think it's water coming through the ComEd easement that's trying to get down into the inlets in their backyards? It's that inlet, those inlets in the backyards aren't capable of bringing that much water.
I think there's a lot of things happening at the same time. I think that the initial storms, when it happens, the water gets into the detention basin and starts to fill it up, and then that restricts the volume of water that can go through those rear yard storm sewers. And so I don't think it can convey everything through it anymore, because the water level of that basin is up. So one of the things we're trying to do is get that detention basin's water level down quicker, and that's the reason why we're installing this piece of pipe here. So there's another outlet over here that's not shown on this map, but if we can get it down a little bit quicker, then hopefully that alleviates a little bit of the blockage. And then by not having so much water standing in the Commonwealth Edison easement, which is it's not the only factor that contributes to the seepage, but it certainly adds to it. So I think that, well, we don't know the nature of all of the underlying soils here, but based on what we're hearing from the residents here is there's got to be some sand and gravel seams there that are allowing groundwater to get to their footing drains pretty quickly.
Okay. The outlet for that detention basin that's not shown, that would be, I guess, west. Are we talking about changing the elevation of that outflow?
We can't, because it's tied into a storm sewer that goes all the way down the line. So there's a chain of lakes that these detention basins go through and then eventually get down to Blackberry Creek. So what we did in 2013, what we did is we removed the restrictor from it, because you're allowed to bypass offsite flows. So that allowed us to get water out of the basin quicker. And I do think that series of, and we did that in a couple of the basins to try to move water quicker, And I do think that that had a positive impact to the project. Now, the events that we've seen issues with have been pretty extreme. So the 2013 storm was a pretty significant rainfall event. This last spring rain that or winter, February storm that we had was frozen ground, 15 inches of snow, and then, 2.5 inches of rain. So you had probably 4 inches of runoff on frozen ground. So that's a pretty significant event, and I think during the course of that event, there was probably some thawing of the ground, so that probably increased the seepage. But, there was no overland flooding that we were aware of. It was seepage problems, I think. So again, this is what we think is like the most that we can probably do to alleviate the problem, is to try to pick up again the low flows or the standing water in the easement, and then bypass this, the 24-inch directly into the detention basin.
The existing piping that's there right now behind the homes on Bryan Lane, is there ever a chance that maybe it'll backflow?
Well, I don't think it'll actually backflow, but it'll just, the water level gets to a point where it just can't get water to the south, because there's too much water in the detention basin. And that's why we want to try to get that down sooner, as fast as we can, which is the purpose of that segment of pipe right there.
And so the purpose of this yellow portion will suck down groundwater. Seems like there's a pretty high groundwater situation there, and this will be sucking that down all the time, even before and during and after a rain event, which would be a huge impact, I think, in this area. At least we're hoping.
Right. I mean, in theory, then, when you do have a rainstorm, you'd have more of a sponge, if you will, to absorb water, because you've at least pulled out as much water as you can all the time.
It's
And
not
so
already
you've got a little-
saturated?
Pardon me?
It's not already saturated?
Right. If you'd be eliminating as much of that water as you possibly could.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your help on this. And, the one question I had is, I haven't really had experience of installing this amount of storm sewer in a ComEd easement. Are they going to be agreeable to this?
Well, we'll find out. I mean, we've made the request. I guess the one thing that we've known in the past is it doesn't interfere with their ability to either build new towers or maintain their towers, because it's underground. So I don't think it has a significant impact to them, but I guess we'll find out. So we would like to get some initial comments from them as what concerns they may have, so that we could address them on the plans before we go to bid. So I'm hoping that we would get, an initial review, find out what their stance is. But again, it doesn't interfere with their use of it. It's underground. They can drive over it. And as you can see, we put it on the periphery of their property, so it's not directly in the middle. So try to minimize the impact to the ComEdison to make it easier to permit. But I don't have a lot of experience, to be honest with you, putting storm sewers in Commonwealth Edison easements either. We've had bike paths that have gone in. Those have been on the edges, and we've had good luck with that. But there's a process, and there's a lot of requirements that typically come with it. So I guess we'll find out.
We're coming into spring, and with spring comes rains. One of the reasons I've pushed this so much is because we needed to get answers, and the state has failed us. But how long are we going to wait for ComEd? Because we've got homeowners here that are worried about the spring rain and getting water in their basement again.
Well, I don't know as if we can move without a permit from ComEd. We don't have any, I guess I'd have to defer to our attorneys if we have any particular powers that we could bring to bear on Commonwealth Edison to permit the process sooner. I just don't know.
Yeah, and typically I don't think so. It certainly was something we can explore, but I believe that you're correct.
Generally
Well-
speaking, they should be agreeable to this, especially with the relationship that we've had, and we've had bike paths and this and that. I can't imagine they would say no, especially because their customers are back up to this as well.
Well, that's fine, but I don't want, this is something, we knew we were going to look at this. We knew we needed to do something. I'm going to look at you, Jeff, and say, why weren't we trying to get permission from ComEd previously? That way we could expedite this thing. You knew that this is something that the residents wanted expedited. And quite honestly, we've sat on our ass now and waited for the state for nothing. And at some point, these residents are going to get water in their basements again. And they're going to call us, and I'm going to send you over there.
All right. Any other questions from the board?
I have a question. Can you clarify, and again, we have no timeline with the work that's going to be done on 30, but that, you said that's a 24-inch pipe. That's what's there now along Route 30?
Right, the pipe that crosses 30 right now is 24 inch, that's approximately right here.
So when that time comes, would that, we go forward with this work, then would that get disturbed because they're going to widen? My concern is, we go forward and we do the work, and obviously, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years before this happens. I would hate to see us do the work and then, with some miracle, let's say they came in 3 years from now, would they be undoing everything we just did?
Well, the only time we'll be able to answer that is when we have the final Phase 1 geometry that's released, and it hasn't been released yet. But we believe we're outside of their right-of-way area,
Okay.
so it should function with or without their improvement, because we do have a pretty wide right-of-way in that area. So I think it'll be unscathed. The real question is, do we want to install it prior to, do we want to work in phases? Do we want to do option A and then, wait and see, or do we want to do both at the same time? So that's another decision that we're
And
going
I
to
was
have to
thinking
make.
that you guys were proposing that we do option A, because I think that was the $100,000
$148.
that would then suck down the groundwater in that. That seems to be the biggest
I think that's
issue there, is water coming up into the basement as opposed to coming over a window well.
Right.
So I think that would be a huge benefit.
That's what I would recommend, is we do option A first, and then we can see if additional work needs to be done.
Because option A also addresses the problem with the drains that are behind their yards now not being able to take any more water out, because you're going to put in that extra leg to drain that basin.
Right.
So we might potentially be able to avoid option B if it works really well.
That's possible. I mean, the initial, part of the challenge is that the initial modeling did show that there would be water standing, I think, with any of the options that we looked at in 2013. But recall that when we looked at this in 2013, the north side of the park had not been vegetated yet. So that's all now grown in, and I think we're seeing a significant reduction in runoff coming off of the soccer fields and everything. So that's been a big improvement. So I think we're going to see reduced runoff coming from the north as well. So there's been a few changes. So we want to take another look at it as soon as we can. But, I think that's another significant change that's been made.
So would the goal be to do option A as soon as we can, when we get the permit? Do we have money for this? It's $150,000.
Actually, right now, it's in the IRP for this fiscal year. We don't know if we're going to get the permit from ComEd yet, but the money's there in the IRP fund.
Okay. so we
Is
have
this
money.
something where we can bid these options out and without delay and hopes of ComEd coming through?
I think we can. What we've done in the past is put in a provision that we would be able to hold the bid for, I think, a maximum of 60 days. That would allow us some time for permitting. So we could advertise, we could bid it and bring in an award, get the bids in and award it to the low bidder, and then just not issue a notice to proceed until we had a permit. So that is an option. I'd like to get just one round of review from ComEd before we go out to bid, so that we can include any special provisions like for insurance or whatever else they might have, so that it's in the contract and we don't have to process it as a change order. But we could move quickly, and we did rough out a schedule. I don't know if I brought it.
Who's the new Sylvia Rogowski over there?
Ron Banner.
Oh, okay, I haven't,
What?
yeah. I haven't met him yet, and if it makes sense, for me to reach out to him, I can. I know Sylvia was unbelievable to
Yeah, I
work
think
with.
that would be very helpful if you did
Okay.
that. It definitely helps.
Okay.
Is the price on option B?
171, I think.
Electronic messed up.
174.
Yep.
So the total for this
171?
project is $320,000?
But we're really talking about option A.
Yeah.
Phase one is what we would look to do now.
150.
Because, see, my big concern is if you went with, let's say, just option B, you've done nothing to mitigate the groundwater problem.
I was kind of fishing to see if we could afford to do both in one pass, but with those kind of numbers, probably not.
Route 30 is a concern on option B.
Well, it seems that to me, only a portion of it will be exposed to Route 30.
Right, yeah, if they're outside of the easement, correct.
Once you bring in that kind of equipment and that kind of skill set, that's what I was thinking. Is it more efficient to do it all at once?
Well, we could take, bids on both segments to get real pricing, and then we can have it set up as an option that you could award one or both segments. That's another thing that can be done during the bidding process.
Option A, then option B is an alternate.
Correct. Yeah.
Option B is an option.
Option B is option A.
All right, well, that works. I think that if you get me contact information for our contact at ComEd, I'll reach out. And then we'll. Oh, awesome.
If we could, the residents here have been very patient with us. If they've got any questions or comments, I'd like to invite them down if they've got anything they want to say.
All four of you still awake up there?
So I'm Brent Wilson. I've been a resident for, 13 years or so now. My only question is, I want to make sure that 15-inch drain tile between the detention pond to the other storm basin, wherever that goes, is that going to be sufficient to actually draw down the groundwater that you're expecting there?
Well, it's the largest that we can install, I think, at this time. Is the outlet pipe that goes to the southeast is 15-inch, so I don't think we can put anything larger than that in.
Okay. I mean, my concern is, you're talking about pipe capacity, it's a cross-sectional area problem, right? And there's an existing 24-inch that isn't sufficient that goes into that pond. My concern is the cross-sectional area of a 15-inch pipe is pretty small compared to a 24-inch
Yeah,
pipe.
the Commonwealth Edison easement is lower than some of the inlets along the 24-inch and that low area. So that's really what we're trying to do, is get that water that sits there and percolates into the ground. We want to get that out so that it doesn't percolate towards your basements.
You're suggesting that there's gravel seams or something that's carrying water underneath the existing storm drains?
That's what I believe, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Answered my question. really appreciate if if all this happens and the trustees can make it happen for us. We
Awesome.
need it. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Appreciate it. Don't want to cut anybody else off, but also don't want to be here till midnight. It's a good time to plug tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. The State of the Village will be in this room, so feel free to hang out until then.
We'll still be here.
What's that?
We'll still be
9:30.
here.
Yeah,
Could somebody go get coffee now?
okay. Anything else on this? Thank you, I really appreciate it. All right, moving along, we have mailbox policy. At 10:40, is this a pressing item that somebody's wanted on the agenda? Is this something that we can wait 2 weeks on?
Trustee Bond has wanted it on the agenda.
My concern is a number of residents are waiting to hear what the village's decision is going to be. And that doesn't mean we couldn't wait another couple of weeks, but they're already,
Yeah. One thought is, in general, we reimburse people for putting in a new mailbox, right? We don't put somebody's mailbox in.
No, we give you up to $50.
Okay, so they would be free and clear to replace their mailbox now that we're getting into spring and save their receipt. And depending on what we do, it would be retro, it would be just like normal.
That's what they would need to do.
I know it's late, but I think with Todd leaving, I'd like to, if you can do it quickly, I would like to hear you. Once he's gone, I don't know who's gonna do it, so rather have him do it. Quickly.
Go.
Go.
Okay. I'll try and make this as brief as I can. There's some information that needs to be shared. So I feel it best to explain our process. The village seeks to perform snow removal by clearing the entire road from curb to curb to deliver the safest travel. The true reason we try and get to the curb is for stormwater conveyance. If the windrow is piled in the roadway, that narrows the roadway for travel and parking, but it also limits the ability for stormwater to reach those drainage basins. You may recall that just a month or so ago, we received about 2.3 inches of rain right after a heavy snowfall within days. So that would have been an event that caused major street flooding if the roads had not been cleared to the curb. With regards to mailboxes specifically, I've reviewed and applied what I believed to be the board's intent with the policy on this matter. The village ultimately does reimburse up to $50 to residents who submit receipts for those supplies. Typically, that is done through April 1st each year, but that period could certainly be extended. The way the policy has been applied is consistent with many other communities. Local examples include Oswego, Yorkville, Sugar Grove, North Aurora, who are all applying the policies in the very same manner that we are with regards to taking responsibility when the truck actually makes contact with a mailbox. Not necessarily if the mailbox falls over as a result of snow coming off the plow. While there are a handful of mailboxes that are hit by a truck each year, the vast majority fail due to the deterioration or poor construction, mostly on a developer's part at the time of installation. It's nearly impossible, well, it is impossible for the snowplow operator to control where the snow goes once it leaves the front of the plow. If we can just pull up a couple of quick examples, I can show. So if you look to the left there, that's a sturdier installation on the west side of town, whereas the one on the right is, again, an installation by the developer, but of a less sturdy quality. In the second slide, please. You can see where the base plate is completely rotten there, laying in the snow. You can also see that cross arm is attached with 2 screws and then some silicone caulk. That's per manufacturer specifications. So no fault of the homeowners, but just not a sturdy construction. Next, please. Here's a wooden timber inside that vinyl wrap that should be providing support, but what we found in this particular example is you would think that vinyl would protect the wood from the elements. It's actually trapping moisture inside, causing for that wood post to deteriorate quicker. If you go to the next one, and I don't need to share all of these with you, but again, that's screwed into the top of that wooden, that rotten wooden post. So while the resident is trying to help by adding a number of screws there, it's not a lack of screws, it's the fact that the base that it's screwed into has no real structural value remaining. You know, there are other pictures I could go on, but in the sake of time, you know, these are material and construction issues, in my opinion. You know, they're not of the property owner's design, but they're a part of the property, and they do require some continued maintenance over time. So that has kind of been the rationale behind taking responsibility for only what a truck hits. Certainly, if we destroy your property because we made contact with it, we believe that we should take care of that. Again, the plow driver can't control where the snow goes after it falls off the edge of the plow. So in those cases where those mailboxes tip over, sometimes due to deterioration, we don't feel it's best to take responsibility for those, much like the neighboring communities seem to be doing. I can answer any questions you might have. I apologize for kind of moving quickly.
How much do the other villages give? We give $50, you said, how much?
Some are 50 and some were 75.
Correct.
Do we need to come up with some sort of village standard for mailbox?
There's a national standard for mailboxes put out by the Postal Service. You'll find that many mailboxes in town don't meet that standard. The face of the actual opening, if you will, should be 6 inches behind the back of the curb, so effectively anywhere from 10 to 12 inches from the front of the curb. It certainly would not be a contact issue if it was that far back. Even if they're installed properly over time, they seem to lean. But there's a standard by the United States Postal Service that I don't think we're going to make any improvements to.
I know when I purchased my home, it didn't, you'd think you buy a house and it comes with the mailbox, but I had to go to Menards and get one. And I'm in construction, I put it in 2 or 3 bags of concrete. It hasn't gone anywhere. I think you're right, a lot of the issues are because the mailboxes are poorly installed. If we're going to pay for replacement of such mailboxes, maybe there needs to be some sort of handout or something saying, this is how it needs to be reinstalled. And I think Stan and I have discussed this a little bit before, but even maybe increasing from the $50 mark up to the $75 mark, because $50 doesn't get you a whole lot when you go to Home Depot or something. You get the plastic ones in 3 or 4 years. It's a perpetual cycle. And we've got to get residents to figure out the proper way to install this thing. If there's a PDF from the post office, hand that out and say, this is how it's going to be installed. Because if you have problems with it again, we're not going to pay for it again unless it's installed properly.
I have a link to that on the website, on the village's website, under snow removal, mailboxes, and standards. Additionally, we print that same diagram on the back of the notices that we submit in the fall after doing mailbox inspection. We cannot foresee every occurrence for mailboxes, but anything that appears to be deteriorated, we do send a letter, and we advise the homeowner, typically in September, that their mailbox is in need. What we find is, particularly in Fairfield and Foxmore, those vinyl wrapped mailboxes, the vinyl and/or sometimes you see the extruded Rubbermaid ones, they get extremely brittle in the cold, frigid temperatures. They certainly don't have the structural integrity that first example you saw in Huntington Chase of sturdy, true 4x4 construction.
not only are they not sturdy by design, and then most of them that I saw have 2 mailboxes on them to boot.
Correct.
So now instead of being a 20-pound mailbox on top of it, you have 40 pounds worth
Well,
of
and they're
mailbox.
cantilevered out in front of the post, whereas the Huntington Chase example, they were side by side. You know, I'm not a tradesman, but it seems that there's a better design.
One question I had is, the $50 is only if the plow hits the mailbox. So if snow knocks it over, that's thrown from the plow, we don't do anything.
Correct.
Okay.
Again, that's similar.
So if-
Snow effectively hits every mailbox in town.
Sure,
So it's
yeah.
a gamble.
So and I think where we were going with this is, if our plow hits it and knocks it over, and it's a huge pain. Mine was knocked over, not by the village, just in general, and to install a new one, a huge pain. It probably doesn't, $50 does not cover the cost. If we hit it, we should be closer to covering the cost of a new mailbox, for sure. But if we're throwing snow, which we're doing on the residents' behalf, and it knocks over your mailbox, whether it's a new one, or as most of these are 15 years old, I don't think that we should be footing the bill for that, especially when some of these are poor designs in the first point. So,
I have some opinions about that. First of all, that's a policy decision that I don't recall the board ever making. We've generously reimbursed mailbox damage now for years. So whatever our policy is, I think we should adopt one that is the process that we have here. But secondly, those 2 subdivisions, the village, through the annexation agreement, took upon itself to specify what the mailboxes should be. And the residents of those communities have been under the impression for years now that when one of them is damaged, they need to replace it with exactly the same thing. So there are 2 opportunities here. One is to have a clear village-wide policy on mailbox damage. And 2, since we know that those plastic mailboxes are a poor design, I don't think the village should get involved in mailbox design in the future.